Namaste. Thank you, everyone at Bangalore International Center, for this amazing opportunity. Nice of all of you to have come here, seeing some faces after years. Namaste, Prem, Neena, all the Buzurgs, all well-wishers. Thank you for coming. This evening, I am dedicating it to a dear friend who we lost very suddenly, Navroz contractor. An extremely authentic, fearless, honest human being who touched so many people, a big fan of Hindustani Rag Sangeet. So I'm dedicating this evening in his memory. Like Radhika just mentioned, a lot has been said about Guru and Shishya, who a Guru is, who is an ideal Shishya, and so on. I won't go into those details. I'm here to just share my journey and what I have heard about my father's journey through with his guru in his training. It's a very vast topic, and we have just over an hour today. So for me, Guru Sahvas is the main important thing. Guru Sahvas is, which means to be with your Guru. And to me, I think that begins for all of us with our parents. First with the mother, and then with the father. And in my case, if it wasn't for my mother, I wouldn't have probably sung at all, because my father believed that if the child has the talent, it will show. And it's up to the student to come and ask, because that's how it was for him and his guru. But my mother recognized that me and my brother both had a talent, and she pushed me into starting Talim with her. And then a few years later, I started my Talim with my father. As it was mentioned earlier, this art form, when you receive it from a guru, it has a source. It just doesn't happen with just one single person. So my father, Pandit Dinkar Kaikini ji, his guru was Dr. S.N. Ratanjankar ji, and his guru was Ustad Fayaz Khan Sahab, as well as Pandit Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande. I am mentioning this specially only because this particular parampara of Bhatkhande ji to Priya and now to Sahana and Nishtha is a lineage, it's a parampara. And everybody has contributed to this parampara, all the gurus, all the Shishyas. So what is parampara? Priya, what do you think? Your thoughts on parampara?
I think, of course, parampara is lineage, but what makes it special is that within a gharana, you can have different streams, different paramparas. So parampara essentially allows for variety even within one umbrella of one gharana, and that creates kind of scope for individuality in the different streams of thought within a gharana.
So, would it be accurate to say parampara is also the thought process that gets passed down? And this particular parampara, unlike the usual gharanas that we hear of, was a very questioning parampara. Not just Dr. S.N. Ratanjankarji, but Pandit Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande was a criminal lawyer of the pre-independent India and practicing criminal lawyer who took up this art form, and mainly because he wanted to document all the bandishes. And he did so over the course of about 20-25 years by actually traveling all over the country, staying with the ustads and the pandits, learning compositions, writing, notating them, and which was a humongous task because people wouldn't part with compositions very easily because they were prized possessions, they were not just songs. So, and because he had a lawyer's mind, he used to document them, learn it from the ustad and the pandit, and once he sang it back to them, if it was accurate, he used to take thumb impressions or signatures of the ustads so that he is not held responsible later. So this kind of thinking, and then he got Dr. Ratanjankar as his Shishya. When his father, Bhatkhandeji's father, realized that Bhatkhandeji's heart lies in this and he is giving up his career as a lawyer, he said, it's all right to do what you're doing, but as a young boy, young man from a Brahmin family, you will not perform. He asked him to never perform. By which time Dr. Ratanjankar had already joined him as a Shishya and his training was on. And a brilliant student like Dr. Ratanjankar, Bhatkhandeji realized that if he does not learn from a performing musician, he himself also will not be a great performer. So he sent Ratanjankarji to Fayaz Khan Sahab. And Ratanjankarji traveled and he was accepted as a Gandaband Shagird, which is, it's a ceremony where people are invited as witnesses and you accept that Shishya. So he was a Gandaband Shagird of Ustad Fayaz Khan Sahab. So this kind of broad-minded, open-minded attitude and thinking was passed down then to Ratanjankarji, and from Ratanjankarji to Pandit S.C.R. Bhatt, Pandit K.G. Ginde, and my father. So what is this open outlook? It is to think beyond gharana. Gharana is, it used to be passed from father to son. Women were hardly performing. So it used to be very male predominant and which passed down from generations in the same family. But when Bhatkhandeji started this and he dedicated his life to spreading music this way through notation and through compositions which got published, and today we are so fortunate that we have almost 2,000 compositions to refer to, which is his handwork. When this happened, he also started an institution, the first college of music in Lucknow, the Maris College, and which was headed by Dr. S.N. Ratanjankarji for 28 years. He was heading it. And scores of students passed through from there. Some of them became musicologists, some of them became performers, some of them became very famous music directors like Roshan. So we have a huge parampara that, like a river which had many rivulets, and it spread. And this parampara is now down to all of us. My father's shishyas, their shishyas. So it continues. To tell you a little about the Guru and Shishya relationship, I'm very fortunate that both my parents were my gurus, and I also had the opportunity to learn from Srimati Shobha Gurtuji, the light classical genre, Upashastriya Sangeet. And the same outlook, I can tell you that Shobhaji was also extremely broad-minded, very open to all kinds of music. Her son Trilok Gurtu is a famous musician in Germany. So it wasn't a very constricting talim. And of course, my father, my mother, and then later when my father was ill, I also took talim from Sri Mahale, Yashwant Mahale ji, who was a direct disciple of Ratanjankarji. And also recently, I have taken talim for a couple of years from Pandit Indudhar Nirodi ji, who was up until 3 months back in Mysore. So I have been extremely fortunate that I've had such a big parivar, Guru parivar, sharing and blessing me. And the same thing has happened with me and Priya. Now, the Guru and Shishya's relationship, yes, it's very, very special. It's extremely special. It is special in many ways. One is, you are not just a Guru to the Shishya, you are that Shishya's complete responsibility. You are like a parent, you are like a friend, philosopher, guide. And this relationship, whether the Shishya is in continuous talim or not, lasts. It lasts for decades. It doesn't happen that the Guru or the Shishya abandon each other. It doesn't usually happen. And like I said, I have that way also been very fortunate that in my family, my younger brother, who's a percussionist, Yogesh, he had talim for 25 years from Abbaji, Ustad Allah Rakha Khan Sahab. And we saw the same kind of relationship that we experienced. So I'd like to ask Priya now, what are her thoughts on Guru and Shishya's relationship?
I think, like you just mentioned, it's quite hard to actually articulate this relationship. It's a bit because it's falls out of the norms of the relationships that we are accustomed to in way, societally, what we are conditioned to. But as Aditi ji said, I think it's a lot there's certainly a lot of responsibility for the guru, because taking a shishya, especially, it could be at any various levels of commitment, but a shishya who is pursuing this as a career or pursuing this very, very seriously, the guru strikes a very delicate balance of course, giving knowledge and guiding, and also watching the shishya and allowing them to go through that journey, make mistakes definitely in that process, but be there in just the balanced way to keep them on track and grounded, because the art form really demands that kind of sustained commitment from both the guru and shishya. And in the current way of life, the way that modern living is, this really kind of goes against the grain, I feel, in terms of the lifestyles we lead, the pace of life, the expectations we have for results when we pursue any path. And this pursuit is a slow burn, as they say. It's a long commitment, and for both guru and shishya. And there has to be a mutual understanding, I think, from both, sometimes unspoken, about what you're getting into when you're in this journey. So.
Yeah. I'd like to tell you a few anecdotes as to how it used to be. Life was very simple earlier, especially during, simple in the sense, probably physically they had faced a lot more hardships than we did, but in thought life was very simple. When Ratanjankar ji went to Fayaz Khan Sahab to ask him to accept him, and Bhatkhande ji had sent him, so Fayaz Khan Sahab was extremely happy to receive Ratanjankar ji as a shishya. The main reason being that Pandit ji had sent him, which is Bhatkhande ji has sent him. And secondly, because he was a graduate. So he used to very proudly say, ye mera shagird hai, ye graduate hai, which was a very big deal for him. And then when he started teaching him, he saw that Ratanjankar ji had a very intellectual, scholastic mind. And once in a concert, Fayaz Khan Sahab was singing Megh Malhar. And Megh Malhar those days was not sung with a Komal Gandhar. But he started his Nomto Malap, and Ratanjankar ji was sitting right in front. And he had his eyes closed, and Khan Sahab was performing. And suddenly when he sang this note, which was not actually part of the rag, Ratanjankar ji suddenly got startled and he looked up, But he had such respect for him, he immediately announced, he said, Shri Krishna, ye tumhare liye nahi hai. He said, just ignore this, ye tumhare liye nahi hai. And later on, he said, if you want to sing, you can still sing it without the Komal Gandhar. But वो जगह, उस राग में वो कमबख्त जगह मांग रही थी, इसलिए मैंने वो स्वर डाल दिया. And to this day, our gharana, we sing Megh with Komal Gandhar. So that was the kind of mutual respect. So this was the kind of times that this parampara followed. And just like they say that after Ratanjankar ji joined the Marist College in Lucknow, Dr. K.G. Ginde, Pandit S.C.R. Bhatt and my father landed there as Shishyas. And my father was the youngest. He was 10 when he went there. And like Priya said, that there has to be tremendous dedication on both the Guru and the Shishya. So when my father reached there, Ratanjankarji saw him. He just saw him. He didn't even hear him. He just saw him and he said, he's too young. I cannot accept him. And he was sent from Bombay by my grandfather with Chidanand Nagarkarji, Pandit Chidanand Nagarkarji, who was already a scholar at Maris College. He took him because there was no escort. And this is pre-independence India, because you're sending a 10-year-old, you don't know when you'll see him next. So, and he had made up his mind that he wants to sing like Fayaz Khan Sahab. And when my father heard Chidanand Nagarkarji perform, which was very, very similar to Fayaz Khan Sahab, he said, I want to learn, I want to sing this like this. So my grandpa just said, will you take him? So he took him. And then Ratanjankarji said, sorry, he's too young, I don't take such young children, I don't teach. So my father just gave up food from the next day. So he went without food for 3 days. And Ratanjankarji just said, no, please send him back. There was no way he would go back. So Pandit Chidanand Nagarkar also started a fast. He said, if you don't teach him, then I'm also not going to eat, And then that got him worried. And then my father's talim started. And they were all living together because Ratanjankarji's family was in Bombay. All the scholars who were there, their families were in Bombay. And they were in a hostel, and their rooms were adjacent to Ratanjankarji's room. And they were all extremely talented young Shishyas who did not need too much instruction or guidance. But their talim was on. When they missed having Ratanjankarji, one-on-one talim, they would practice in the next room where Ratanjankarji's office was, and on purpose make some mistakes in their riyaz. So he would immediately get up and go and, say, what are you singing? And that was the way they would lure him for talim. Otherwise, their talim usually was in the institution, in the Maris College. So, my father has composed a composition in Rag Sazgiri, which is a tribute to all the gurus. So before we go ahead, we'd like to just present it. It says, Guru ke charan chit dharle, Guru ke charan chit dharle, karle manan gun gyan dhyan. Hove guni gunavant gyan se, सीखे गुरु मुख से तान. गुरु के चरण चित धरले, 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 करले मनन गुण ज्ञान ध्यान, करले गुण ज्ञान ध्यान गुरु के चरण चित धर ले
गुरु के चरण चित धर ले
गुरु के चरण चित धर ले कर ले मनन गुण ज्ञान ध्यान कर ले मनन गुण ज्ञान ध्यान गुरु के
चरण चित धर ले
होवे गुणी गुणवंत ज्ञान से होवे गुणी गुणवंत ज्ञान से
होवे गुणी गुणवंत ज्ञान से
सीखे
गुरुमुख से दान
गुरु के चरण चित धर ले गुरु के चरण
चित धर ले
कर ले मनन गुण ज्ञान ध्यान गुरु के चरण
चित धर ले
होवे गुणी गुणवंत ज्ञान से होवे गुणी गुणवंत ज्ञान से सीखे गुरुमुख से दान गुरु के चरण चित धर ले गुरु के चरण गुरु के चरण गुरु के चरण चित धर ले So this is a small example of why I sang this also was when the student is with the Guru all the time, the Guru Sahavas, it just completely makes that Shishya. It molds that Shishya. And earlier in the Gharana system, it was considered sacrilege to think outside of the Gharana. But in this parampara, because of probably the intellectual mindset that Bhatkandeji and Ratanjankarji had, and Bhatkandeji definitely had that because even in his books at the end he has written this, that this art form has to keep moving. It will keep moving. The Bhupali that was sung 700 or 500 years ago, who knows what it was? We are just singing it thinking that this is the authentic Bhupali. So he has said that as people will travel, people will hear each other more, the music will evolve, and that's just how it's supposed to. It cannot be stagnant because the minute it gets stagnant, it dies. And Ratanjankarji also had that mindset. He was also a prolific composer. And that, the compositional ability or the compositional interest, my father also had. So did Gindeji. And there are a lot of compositions that when you hear some of the people who have heard Ratanjankarji's compositions over the years, they sometimes mistake my father's compositions for his and vice versa. So when a student stays with a guru, it's not just the music, it's not just the thought, but it's all these things. Ratanjankarji could fluently speak 14 to 16 languages, and he has composed compositions in Bundelkhandi, in Brijbhasha, in Awadhi. He has composed Karnataka Kritis, Varnams, and in Sanskrit. He has composed the Varnams. 6 of his Varnams are now being recorded very soon. they are in Sanskrit. So he was a compulsive composer, you could say, and some beautiful, beautiful compositions. That compositional ability, my father got very inspired, and he has therefore also composed a lot of compositions, over 200 compositions. We've lost many because many of them, he was in All India Radio in Delhi for 17 years, and he had to compose 3 compositions every week. But unfortunately, we barely have 15 of those left, which are now documented. But we lost all the others because there wasn't any recorder, or I don't know why he didn't write them down. So, what actually happens when, how does the talim start? The word, when the Shishya meets the Guru and the training starts, it's called talim. And what is talim? When Priya came to me, she was already a graduate from the Columbia University. She stayed with me for 3 months, and the talim began as if she was absolutely new. And why is that? That is because, like I said, each parampara has its own thought, the way the Guru thinks. So there is a particular way in which they think about the talim, and that talim needs to start from scratch. So though she had about 13 years of Carnatic music background, I had to start from sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa. And yes, she had to work very hard to get rid of the re and make it re, and a lot of other Carnatic touches that were in her voice. But just to give you a little glimpse of how this parampara goes about teaching, also because Bhatkhande ji, Ratanjankar ji, Ginde ji and my father were all heading institutions where music was taught, this music was taught. It was a BA course, 5 years course. So they had exams at the end, right? So it was impossible to spend 6 to 8 months on one rag, because our syllabus used to be pretty heavy. We had 10 rags per year, 10 dhrupads, 10 dhamars, 10 vilambit khayals, 10 dhruts, 10 taranas, and 5 light pieces. So it was a very humongous syllabus. So things you had to move quickly. And so Ratanjankar ji and then the rest of the Shishyas, they formulated a way of teaching. Alankars first. Then when you start a rag, what is actually a rag? And rag is such an abstract thing, and for a student who is 13, 15, 10, very difficult to understand. So they had put together this teaching aid, which made it so easy. So when Priya came to me, she started with, like Sahana and Nishtha too, they had to start from scratch. So I'd like you to just demonstrate just a couple of alankars, which not only help you in the pronunciation, but also strengthening the voice. It strengthens the voice, and also the lay aspect, the lay and tal aspect gets really strong.
Sa-re-ga-ma pa sa-re-ga-ma pa da sa-re-ga-ma pa da ni sa-re-ga-ma pa da ni sa sa-ni sa-ni da pa sa-ni da pa ma sa-ni da pa ma ga sa-ni da pa ma ga re sa-ni da pa ma ga re sa.
So this is one.
Re sa ga re sa ma ga re sa pa ma ga re sa da pa ma ga re sa ni da pa ma ga re sa sa-ni da pa ma ga re sa. Ni sa da ni sa pa da ni sa ma pa da ni sa ga ma pa da ni sa re ga ma pa da ni sa re ga ma pa da ni sa.
So these are called alankars. Generally, alankars are taught without percussion. We had to, not that we had a tabaliya constantly playing with us, but we had to play the theka and sing the. Now what happens is, this is teen tal. Dha dhin dhin dha dhin dhin dha tin tin ta traka dhin dhin dha dhin dhin dha dhin dhin dha dhin dhin ta. It's a cycle of 16 beats, right? And half of 16 is 8. So ashtak in our, even in the entire musical training, it holds a very important place. Everything happens in eights. So it's actually dha tin tin ta dhin dhin. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15. So this is the basis. So whatever they sang, of course, when you begin, it's at a much lower speed, slower speed. As the student advances, you increase the speed. And then there are lay exercises. Radhika specially requested this because apparently she heard me in a workshop and she found that interesting. But that's the basis. That's where all our students, they have to go, mandatory to go through that. Tin tin ta ta dhin dhin. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 3 4 5 6 7 8 4 5 6 7 8 5 6 7 8 6 7 8 7 8 8 1 7 8 6 7 8 5 6 7 8 4 5 6 7 8 3 4 5 6 7 8 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 dha. So this is something that all students go through. The difference now is the students now take much longer because nobody counts in Hindi anymore. And why it's not possible to count in English is simply because 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 3 4 5 6 7 8 4 5 6 7 8 5 6 7 8 6 7 8 7 8. Now 7. If you have to say 7, there is an extra microbeat. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Sat is just one pronunciation. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Right? So in English it becomes impossible because you take that space. The laghu lay it's called. So that one laghu is extra. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 3 4 5 6 7 8 4 5 6 7 8
5 6 7 8 6 7 8 7 8
8 7 8 6 7 8 5 6 7 8 4 5 6 7 8 3 4 5 6 7 8 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 8. So by doing this repeatedly, there is a kind of bounce that comes in, which is known as, it's actually the meter, but it's called chand. Ta dhin 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 dha dhin dhin dha tin tin ta dhin dhin. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 3 4 5 6 7 8 4 5 6 7 8 5 6 7 8 6 7 8 7 8 8 7 8 6 7 8 5 6 7 8 4 5 6 7 8 3 4 5 6 7 8 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 dha 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 dha 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 dha rhythm dha then this is the next there are many. I'm just 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 dha 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 dha 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 dha dha tin tin ta 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. So these exercises just make it fun. It makes it fun to get into the tal aspect. And what it's actually doing is 1 2 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. When you say this, the micro beats are silent, right? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 4 5 5 6 6 7 8. That's the micro beat, but it's silent. But the student realizes and he starts seeing that gap is not a blank. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 dha 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 dha 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 dha. Incidentally, all these were actually composed by Birju Maharaj ji for his students in Kathak. But it applies to music because Geetam Vadyam Tatha Nrityam iti Sangeetam Uchyate. Sangeet is a unison of Geet, Vadya and Nritya. So the only thing is the vocalist has to just sit in one place, but all this is our Nritya, the hand gestures. So this is the example of Lay and Tal. What the Buzurgs used to say sometimes is, बेटा तुम्हारे गले में सुर है, अच्छी है आवाज़, लेकिन रूदारी नहीं है. Now what is that रूदारी? Rudari is when a student gets initiated and sits with a note, a swara, for many, many, many hours, months, years. There is a kind of the swara and that Shishya's soul, there's a unison. And that becomes ruhdari. The swara gets ruh, that means the swara gets its own soul. So many ustads and pandits have said that when you are given a palta or a tan and you sing it 100 times, you can by heart it, right? You sing it 300 times, you'll never forget it. But when you sing it for 1,000 times, you get the palta or that particular bandish or whatever you're working on, it illuminates. Usme tej aata hai. So this is the thing that Priya just mentioned, that it is a long, arduous, slow journey, which now, because of the times we are in, it's getting altered to suit, to keep the student happy, or all of those things have started now because people's patience, everything is short now, and this is the era of instant gratification. So coming to Priya's Talim, she will share it actually more than me, how she came to me and what were the difficulties. And for me, I honestly it wasn't a very difficult time with Priya at all, because she came with absolute clarity of what she wanted. And if I can say it publicly, like my buzurgs, my gurus would have said, usme kya badi baat hai? If you have to make it, you have to work that hard. But there were days when I had to ask her to stop. She used to put in that kind of work, which is very rare now. Yeah. Over to you.
So when I came to Aditi ji, it began as I was taking a gap year, or just a break year to study with her. And it all happened very organically, I would say. I came and I, I didn't actually. It was her father who suggested that I live with her and her family. It was, it wasn't something we had planned in great detail before. I just landed in Bangalore, and he suggested that, and I'm very, very grateful that he did, because the opportunity I had to live with her and her family, I think, enhanced my talim immensely. I think it it was a very immersive, very, very immersive experience, and I think there's a lot of discussion about this method of training, pedagogically, otherwise. But I feel, after, from my experience, that if the guru and shishya are on the same wavelength, and they have that connection and this very kind of transparent understanding about what the journey is, then if you get that opportunity to live with your guru, it's the most, I think, efficient, at the very practical level, it's the most efficient method of learning, because just simply that you are doing it so consistently over a long period of time with immediate feedback that keeps happening on what you're doing. So there's not a lot of time or room for going off, because the guru is there and they keep bringing you back on the path. So, of course, I think a lot of factors have to align for this to kind of materialize. The guru has to be in a phase of their life where they have that space, physical space, mental space to give. And the student has to be in a space in their life that they can prioritize this talim above everything. I mean, it's pretty much everything centers around this, and they come kind of as an empty vessel and just take and take. And also, I mean, it's not enough just to take, because the guru can keep giving, but then the student, the shishya, has to put in, I would say, triple effort to digest that knowledge. Otherwise, it's just going to pile up and not kind of translate. So when I came, I had this opportunity to live with her and her family, and it was, I think, one of the most nurturing atmospheres. It was, I would say, idealized circumstances for learning, because I assimilated into her family and her extended family. Music was just, everything revolved around music. I think my day would begin with everything. I mean, of course, I was guided with vocal riyaz, like she mentioned, that kind of swara sadhana. Then I would have talim with Aditi ji. Of course, she also guided the vocal riyaz, but then the talim with her, which happened pretty much every day, 6 days a week. There's no schedule, there's no weekends, weekdays. It's just on, in which she would be giving me so much rag, bandish, all the content. And then, of course, in addition to talim, a lot of listening, very active listening, attending many concerts, and then, of course, doing riyaz every day on whatever she taught me, and then the next day it just repeats. It's just like this over and over. And of course, a lot of things happen outside of just that talim moment. Because you're living with the guru, there's so many conversations. There's a lot of observation. Everything doesn't have to be kind of explained. You just have to be very tuned into what's happening and pick up on the atmosphere that is present in the home. I mean, for me, I think that was very important, because I don't come from a family of professional musicians. My family are enthusiastic, lovers of music. But when you live with your guru and you see the life, what is this life like? Because it was very foreign to me. Then you start to put this data together and understand that these are the kind of ways a musician navigates their life. And I had the opportunity to travel often to Mumbai and stay with her parents, which was also the same, of course, more and more a different energy of musical, a musical atmosphere of her father and mother and her brother. And I also had the chance to travel with her brother, Pandit Yogesh Samsi. Just at this point, I would say for so many years, at least 10 years, just soaking everything in and doing. And there's no other agenda except learning for the sake of learning. I don't think there was no other goal except to master whatever she was giving me. So when I traveled with her brother, I could attend so many festivals and get a sense of the culture of the music in Jalandhar, Aurangabad. I mean, there's so many places where I just was a kind of silent observer. And there's so many things that one can say about this, but all of this is talim, all of this is part of this training. And
yeah, it's interesting you said the word 10 years, because that's what in Talim they say, that the first 10 years, they used to say, kuch pucho nahi. Just do what you're told. And when we were told that, and I would say that there are questions that come. So my father used to say, just definitely you can ask those questions, but if you just silently do for that period of time, your questions get answered in that doing. You will not have those questions. So and now of course, Gladwell, the outliers, he says 10,000 hours of doing something to master, which is so true, because in the talim we actually experienced it. And the other thing about talim is that talim happens in different ways. Like she said, when you're sitting in a session with a guru, later, if the guru is available and you talk, we could ask questions, we would discuss something, that is talim. Then talim is when you travel with the guru, or the guru visits you. Like my father would visit Bangalore for concerts, and that is talim. And when we were much younger, when I was in talim, 12, 13, 14 years old, if there were concerts in Mumbai, we were sent to play Tanpura like this, with all performing artists, anybody. And we had to sit there in Baithak for 3 hours, that is talim, without changing your position and knees hurting or feet, my foot is asleep and I have pins and needles, no such thing. Baithak mein baitho, bajao, and the artist would just turn around and say, sur lagao, So whether you knew the bandish, whether you knew that rag, you just had to jump in, And so that is another way of learning, that is talim. And of course, there were very well-known artists whom, when we would sit down for Tanpura, my father would instruct and say that साज बजा लेगी लेकिन सुर लगाएगी, बढ़त नहीं कर सकती है. So that used to be told, otherwise you end up disturbing, because if you don't know the rag. But with our guru, when we would sit, and if we didn't pick up the composition, and typically the gurus my father would be in the green room and he'd say, he's singing Yaman, and when he went to the stage, he would start Kedar, So we used to be really lost, but he used to openly say it, ye bhi talim hai, uthao, mukhda. And it could be a tal which you haven't learned before, but you just had to jump in, and that's another form of talim. So the other thing is the art of listening. Listening is also talim. And right from Dr. Ratan Shankarji, they never restricted their Shishyas and my father never restricted us from listening to other gharanas. There used to be a very strong belief that हमारे घराने के बाहर if you listen, your ears get कान खराब हो जाते हैं. So that was, but that was not followed in this parampara, and it used to be explained why. Also, another thing I remember listening to so often is कानों से देखो, आँखों से सुनो. So the first word that comes in Talim is observation. You observe through your ears, not through the eyes. So they used to say, Kano se dekho, aankhon se suno, which means listening so intently, so focusedly. So, which is still the same. My students today also, they receive the same talim. But why has it changed? Why the whole dynamics has changed is because one, talim doesn't happen 6 days a week anymore. Two, thanks to COVID, it became online. So that has played a huge role in changing the dynamics of teaching. Because when I teach, my lessons are never 1 hour. You know, they can be 1.5, 1 hour 40 minutes, 1 hour 15 minutes, sometimes just 45 minutes if a certain thing had to be finished that day, and it's over, so it's over. But otherwise, my lessons, they have all experienced, are never 1 hour. So, to sit and focusedly absorb and sing for 1.5, 2 hours today has become an effort. Because I have taught now for the past 35, 40 years, and I'm seeing attention spans also going down. This is also because of so many other distractions that students have today. The social media, there's just constant onslaught, you know. And that has contributed to a great deal, I must say, in this change. Also, everybody comes with certain expectations. Like she said, first 10 years, she just learned for the love of learning. That has also gone now. Because when some of the students who come to me, when they call, they ask, Neevu Amul Voice of India ge ready ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ? You know. So they come with that. They come thinking that they will join as Shishyas and I'll get them ready for Amul Voice of India. So everybody, this whole thing, which is now become very goal-oriented. I'm learning so I can perform in 3 years. I'm learning so I can sit on stage in 5 years, whatever. We never had that. We just learned for the love of learning, and we just kept on. So I feel that if you have the mindset of a student all through, till the day you die, nothing can be better than that. I say this not as just as a statement, because today when I hear Priya, when I hear my Shishyas, I learn a lot from them, a lot. The number of students who are wanting to learn today has gone up exponentially, I must say. If my father was alive today, he would have laughed, you know, to find out that somebody has 45, 50 students. He would say, "Arey baap re, sikhate kaise ho 50 logon ko?" You know. But because of the other factors, the ability to take and do it the way it needs to be done, because there is no shortcut. There is absolutely no shortcut for this. for any fine art for that matter, dance, visual arts, painting, sculpture. So it just takes that long. But I would say that the generation now is easily frustrated and they get perturbed a little more easily because they keep seeing their goals. We never had any goals. We just kept learning. And as I mentioned, that when you learn for a certain number of years and be in the sahavas of your guru, how things get passed down. Love for language, love for poetry, you know. And I'll give you an example of two compositions. One is Ratan Jankarji's and one is my father's. One is in Jhinjhoti Rag and one is in Jai Jaivanti. Now, till we were in the course-wise bachelor's course study, the traditional compositions had very simple 2 lines for the sthai and 2 lines for the second half antara. But when we started learning Ratan Jankarji's compositions, full of words, absolutely packed with words. So when the composition is read or recited, it sounds like, I mean, how will this even sit in a tal cycle? But when it's sung, it is just effortless. So I'll just give you an example. सावरिया ने मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो, सावरिया ने मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो, सावरिया ने मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो, सावरिया ने सुंदर सूरत रंग भरी चित चोरी, सुंदर सूरत रंग भरी चित चोरी, सुधा बुधा बिसर गई मोरी सारी, मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो, सावरिया ने मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो, सावरिया ने. It's a very unusual composition also because it starts on the second beat. मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो, सावरिया ने सुंदर सूरत रंग भरी चित चोरी, सुध बुध बिसर गई मोरी सारी, मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो, सावरिया ने. सावरिया ने मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो, सावरिया ने मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो, सावरिया ने सुंदर सूरत रंग भरी चित चोरी, सुंदर सूरत रंग भरी चित चोरी, सुध बुध बिसर गई मोरी सारी, मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो, सावरिया ने. सोवत जागत मन लागी, सोवत जागत मन लागी रहत नित, सोवत जागत मन लागी रहत नित, कछु नहीं मोहे अब सूझ बूझ आज लाज काज की तरपत जिया। देखी देखी मैं भई वाके चरणन की चेरी, मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो सांवरिया ने मेरो मन। सो मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो सांवरिया ने, सुंदर सूरत अत रंग भरी चित चोरी, सुध बुध बिसर गई मोरी सारी। सोवत जागत मन लागी रहत नित, कछु नहीं मोहे अब सूझ बूझ आज लाज काज की तरपत जिया। आई हैव नो कंसर्न, सूझ नहीं है, बूझ नहीं है, लाज नहीं है, काज इज काम, काम का कुछ सवाल ही नहीं है। सोवत जागत मन लागी रहत नित, कछु नहीं अब मोहे सूझ बूझ आज लाज काज की तरपत जिया। देखी देखी रे मैं भई वाके चरणन की चेरी, मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो सांवरिया ने। मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो सांवरिया ने, सुंदर सूरत तरंग भरी चित चोरी, सुध बुध बिसर गई मोरी सारी। मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो सांवरिया ने, मेरो मन सांवरिया ने, मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो 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 सांवरिया ने। सुंदर सूरत रंग भरी चित चोरी, सुध बुध बिसर गई मोरी सारी। मेरो मन सखी हर लीनो सांवरिया ने, सांवरिया ने, सांवरिया ने। Now parallel is in Jai Jayanti. सेम स्पॉट। सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी केरी आज, सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी केरी आज, सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी केरी आज,
सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी केरी आज।
जायो नंद जी केरी आज, देखो देखो कैसे कैसे अधर अधर फरकात फरकात, हसत हसत मिच मिच आखियाँ आखियाँ लुभात लुभात। सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी केरी आज, सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी केरी आज। देखो देखो कैसे कैसे अधर अधर फरकात फरकात, हसत हसत मिच मिच आखियाँ आखियाँ लुभात लुभात। सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी केरी आज, सुंदर नंद कुंवर मुख मोहे मोहत अत, नंद कुंवर मुख मोहे मोहत अत। कौन नाम धरत सजत सुजत जसुमती, राखत राखत मोहन मन मोहन। सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी केरी आज। So here the words are Sundar Salone Jayo Nandji ke Riyaj. Let's go to Nanda's house where there is little Krishna who is falling asleep, and what the child does when it's falling asleep, you know. सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी के रियाज, देखो देखो कैसे अधर अधर फरकात फरकात, हसत हसत मीच मीच अखियाँ लुभात लुभात. And each word comes twice. That's another style of composing. The Antara says, Nand Kuvar mukh mohe mohat at, Kaun naam dharat sujat. Who is going to name him? And then Sujhat Jasumati Rakhat Rakhat Mohan Man Mohan. सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी के रियाज देखो देखो कैसे कैसे अधर अधर फरकात फरकात हसत हसत मिच मिच आखियां आखियां लुभात लुभात सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद कुंवर मुख मोहे मोहत हाथ नंद कुंवर मुख मोहे मोहत हाथ कौन नाम धरत सजत सुजत जसुमति राखत राखत मोहन मन मोहन सुंदर सलोने जायो नंद जी के रियाज नंद जी के रियाज नंद जी के रियाज. Another very, very important aspect of Talim is, of course, the Rag and Bandish. This parampara that we belong to, we teach at least 7 to 8 bandishes in every Rag. The reason being, what is a bandish? It's also called a khayal. A khayal is a composition composed by a certain composer who sees that rag in that particular way. Right? So, the more the compositions, the more avenues the student has to look at the rag. So, each composition which is taught is in a different tal. It has a different sum, which is the first note of the tal cycle. So a certain rag, a certain bandish may, the first note, the sum may fall on Gandhar, it might be on Nishad, it might be on Tarsa. So the bandish moves in a very different fashion. This also enables a student to keep finding ways of fleshing out the rag. And different gharana bandishes are also taught. So what we have chosen today is the Vilambit bandish is actually typically belongs to the Gwalior gharana, which is very, very particular about the way the bandish is laid on the theka. The tal that Yogesh will play is Tilwada. It's a cycle of 16 beats. Teen tal is also a cycle of 16 beats, but with different words. So this is a Vilambit composition in Tilwada tal, followed by a composition which is composed by my Guru, Pandit Dinkar Kaikini ji, which is a very Shringarik bandish. The first one, the words are Palakan se magajharu eri mai. The drut is Tori najariya lage pyari dekhat sudh budh sab bisar gayi sari. So just listen to these two compositions and how the rag is embedded in that composition. So the more the compositions, the more mastery over that particular rag. लागे प्यारी तोरी नजरिया लागे प्यारी तो
तोरी नजरिया
लागे प्यारी तोरी नजरिया लागे प्यारी तोरी नजरिया लागे प्यारी तोरी नजरिया लागे प्यारी देखत सुध बुध सब विसार गई सारी तोरी नजरिया लागे प्यारी देखत सुध बुध सब विसार गई सारी नजरिया लागे प्यारी
तोरी नजरिया काहे को वसो मारो टोना
काहे को ऐसो मारो टोना काहे को ऐसो मारो टोना भूल गई सब जग के काज आज दिन रंग जाऊं मैं तो बीमारी तोरी नजरिया लागे प्यारी लागे प्यारी लागे प्यारी And with having a guru's sahvas for many, many decades, and when like I said right in the beginning, when the souls sort of become one with the guru, with the music, comes a very special spiritual experience which my father experienced. He had not learnt jog, the rag jog from his guru. And before he could, Ratan Jankarji passed away. And he was extremely regretful of that. And on his first death anniversary, Dinkarji wanted to perform this very badly. He wanted to sing jog. So he just sat for riyaz with the tanpura, and of course he had heard jog, so he thought about it a lot. And I'm a witness to this because he sat for riyaz at night with no composition. He just did alap and we went to bed. And next morning, he said, he showed my mother this writing pad with, it crooked, written crookedly. So she read it and she said, "What is this?" So he said, this tivra ichha that I had to sing jog, but because I couldn't learn it from Anna Sahib, that's what he was called, I dreamt that he taught me jog in my sleep. And I didn't want to wake you, so this composition, the sthai, the first half came to him in his sleep. And he wrote it down. Anna Sahib, Dr. Ratan Jankarji's pen name was Sujan. All his compositions have Sujan or Sujan. So, Aaye Sant Sujan, Det Vidya ko daan, bhankat mere kaan, supne mein aan. The Antara he composed a day or two later. Kit bad bhag jage saban ke, jo prasad pave dinarang. That is Dinkar Kaikini's pen name. Sujan son aaj. So he said, I'm truly blessed that he had this experience of him appearing in his dreams and teaching him. So Priya will present that.
Na प्रसाद
we'd be happy to take any questions if there are.
Thank you, Aditi ji, Priya ji, and all the artists accompanying you. This was such a fascinating peek into the deep rigor and immersive approach of your parampara, and the musical exchanges you showed us, the compositions were wonderfully illustrative of the kind of creativity and the rigor, I think, with which the talim has been experienced in your parampara. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think we have too much time, but maybe we could take a couple of questions if there are anybody. I just wanted to add that Aditi ji wanted to do this today as a tribute to her gurus, because last week we had Guru Purnima,
Yes.
and this was a very moving tribute, especially to her father, which we ended up in that last composition. That was wonderful. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
First of all, thank you, and I appreciate, like, this is a very amazing experience to hear the teacher as well as the shishya together. So it's wonderful. So thank you for the experience. My question is, how does it change from a female voice and a male voice? Like, for you to learn from your dad and to learn from your mom, how was that, like, difference, or maybe certain changes or the intricacies?
Yeah. Yes, it plays a very big role when you learn only from a male. My mother taught me the initial 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years, and after that I moved to my father. But like I said, the very first lesson is in observation. And when they said, Kano se dekho, so especially the Nomto Mala, which this gharana is famous for, and which was popularized by all the Fayaz Khan Saab and Sharafat Hussain Khan Saab and Latafat Hussain Khan Saab. They were all male singers. And when I was getting trained, every phrase he would sing, and I had to repeat, and exactly. And then he used to say, now sing it like a woman. So, yeah, and Agra Gharana basically is a very male predominant gharana. It has a lot of laikari, a lot of voice, projection, but he used to say, you have to listen to yourself. You have to be your biggest critique. So, and then he would, ishare se we would know, if we were pushing it. He said, "Acha lag raha hai? Phir se suno, acha lag raha hai?" So this takes time, but yeah, it's a very important, very good question, because it was only after I went from him, after so many years learning from him, when I went to Shobhaji, Gurtu, it was a completely different experience for me to learn from a female artist again. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I think we don't have any more questions, so we'll wrap up. And
Sure.
I wanted to just add that I don't think 90 minutes is enough to capture so much history. But you had put together such a beautiful presentation that I think we got a sense of the history, and we got the sense of the main points that you wanted to illustrate in the Talim experience, and that has been wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.